I'd like to introduce Bill from Ireland, who has multiple sclerosis. Welcome, Bill.
Hello.
Could you tell me when you first started noticing your MS symptoms?
Well, going way back, I had a neuritis in my eye. That was when I was a student in the early 70s.
Mm-hmm.
But in those days, the diagnosis wasn't so easy.
Mm.
But then coming along, it was in 1990 when I had a final diagnosis of MS, so remitting and relapsing.
Yes. What were your symptoms at that time?
At that time, severe fatigue, weakness, and a slight slurring of speech, which my speech still isn't perfect. It's still a bit affected.
Mm. And how did that affect you, being diagnosed, having that MS label?
Well, I mean, I knew all along in a way, because I mean the indication from the early days was that I had MS, but so the confirmation in 1990 didn't really affect me too much. But I was very conscious that the fatigue, especially, was getting worse and worse, and impacting on my job.
Mm-hmm.
And I was very concerned just as to how long I would be able to continue.
Mm-hmm. How did you learn about LDN?
Well, I was attending a national health consultant, and he and my GP for years, and I'm sure they were tired of hearing me complain about fatigue and asking what might be done about it, or could anything be prescribed. I was getting no real assistance, and I decided, really out of exasperation, to make a private appointment with another consultant.
Mm-hmm.
And I found he was much easier to talk to. Obviously, he had more time to talk to me because it was a private appointment.
Yeah.
And it was he who said, after we had chatted for a while, it was he who said, "Oh, I thought maybe you were here looking for LDN."
Mm.
And I stared back at him in amazement, because I'd never heard of LDN. And he said, I asked him more about it, and he said, well, this has worked for some people. And coincidentally, a good friend of mine, just at the same time, asked me about had I come across LDN. This friend is a retired vet, and actually it was his GP who mentioned. I think his sister-in-law has MS, and it was his GP who mentioned LDN, and who indeed is prescribing it to some of his MS patients.
Mm-hmm.
So naturally, when I returned home from the consultant, I got on the computer and found out a lot more about LDN.
So when did you start LDN?
I started it at the beginning of December last.
Hmm. Did you notice any initial side effects?
Yes. I was waking up, and to some extent still am, having taken the LDN at 10 p.m. I was waking up at 3 a.m. roughly, and would stay awake for an hour or so and then get back to sleep. But for me, that was a small price to pay, because the very day after I took the first tablet of LDN, and I know this sounds a bit extreme, but the very day after I first took LDN, the severe fatigue that I was feeling every morning when I woke up was no longer there. I still had and still have a certain amount of tiredness, but it's not the fatigue that I've been having for years.
Well, that's good.
I was really astonished, to be quite honest with you.
Mm-hmm. So, what impact would you say LDN has had on your life overall?
Well, it's given me my life back. I'm able to do things that I've long since, or I had long since, ceased doing. I appreciate the MS I had and still have is at the lower end of the scale, but it was preventing me from going out in the evenings. I was relying entirely on my wife to do everything around the house and in the garden. It's made a huge difference to me.
What would you say to other people with MS that are thinking of trying LDN?
Well, I would say, what have you to lose? You're probably not getting anything that's really in the way of medication that's life-changing. If you try LDN, my understanding is that the side effects are minor. They certainly were in my case, and my understanding is there's no suggestion of serious side effects. What have you to lose? And I couldn't endorse it strongly enough.
Well, that's wonderful. Before we finish, is there anything else you'd like to add?
No, I think that's... I would just say that when I first learned of LDN, I was astonished, and I continue to be astonished at the lack of information that is available to not just MS patients, but doctors. My own GP had never heard of it and was very skeptical initially, but was won over reasonably quickly. Perhaps the consultant, perhaps he had a word with the consultant, I don't know. But it really astounded me, and naturally I've spoken to friends who have MS, and some of those I know are are taking up LDN. One friend in particular, who unfortunately is in a wheelchair, rang me recently and said he'd only been on LDN for a week, and there perhaps hadn't been any great changes, but his wife had remarked that he seemed a great deal sharper, and he couldn't be more grateful to me for mentioning it. And it just seems an absolute disgrace that this reasonably inexpensive drug is not being made more widely available.
Yes. Right. Well, it's all going to be edited, so that'll all be sorted out. So I'll do the final bit.
I'm sorry if I rambled on a bit
fine.
there.
No, but it'll be, because I spoke, you see, so what I'm saying now will all be taken out. So what you have said will be moved up. So I'll just do the closing part of thanking you.
Yes.
Well, thank you, Bill, very much for sharing your story with us. I really do appreciate it.
Oh, you're very welcome.
Right, that's it. Well, thank you very much. It sounded absolutely fine.